Welcome to the Save Childhood podcast with Jennifer McCarville. Because childhood has changed, but children have not.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Save Childhood podcast.
I'm Jennifer McCarville.
And I'm Nicole Dugan. And in the previous episode, we talked about process art versus product art.
Yes.
And we dove deeper into what that means, what that looks like. Today, we're going to be talking about how we honor the children's artwork through an art show. Some people might think that is challenging if you're doing process art and how you display it or why you would even bother. But
killing me with that.
We do. We spend a lot of time and money to put on an art show, and we recently did that because it's important and valuable. So important. And so we're going to dive into that today.
Yay.
So let's start by talking about why. Let's start talking about
why we do an art show.
Yeah.
So we do an art show because those process creations tell a story, an important story of creating, an important story of being an artist. And also it's so prevalent in the days and the work of the children that oftentimes people don't understand how important it is and how valuable it is. And so we actually did our first art show the first year we were open. You know, people do open houses and you have other families come in and see the school. And when a lot of schools do that, they create this real pressure environment for children. There's just so much pressure around that to create something that will impress the adults. And we aren't about impressing the adults. We're about honoring the development. But I can tell you that in honoring the development, paired with educating the adults, then they are impressed. So it was important that this is what the children are doing a lot of the time, and how we share the actual work of childhood in a way that honors what they're doing. And I'll tell you that at one of our very first art shows, probably in the first 5 years, one of the parents came up to me and she literally said, "Wow, this stuff is pretty impressive. I just always thought it was junk. I've always thrown it in the trash can." And I thought, mission accomplished. You know, it really honors the work that children are doing.
Yeah, it helps the parents see their children as artists, but it also, one of our goals with art show is that the children see themselves as artists. Every child's an artist.
Every child's an artist. That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah. So,
you want to talk about the steps of creating the art show? Let's do that.
Okay.
Let's talk about the steps of creating the art show. So the first step is the children create. The children create, and the children are always creating. So I mentioned in the previous episode I talked about in process art, giving them mini experiences and varying those experiences. So when the children create something or with some materials, then they do it multiple ways. They want to have lots of experiences, and that process of learning techniques or learning and interacting with certain materials, whether it be sticks or spin art or weaving, that process is always documented by the teachers through photos and also through written word. So as they're going through that and it's unfolding, so for the older children, that process might take longer. One of the things that the children in the primary class had been working on all year, because the art show is in the spring. One of the things the children had been working with, one medium, was weaving.
Mm-hmm.
And so because the children were interested in it and it kept growing their skills and they kept becoming engaged, and this is Nicole's class. She leads that group of teachers. And so you want to share a little bit about the weaving process and how that went from piddling around with it, learning it, introducing it, into this really, 6-month exploration, and how it culminated in a display at the art show.
Yeah, the children are introduced to the concept of weaving in the kindergarten or the cottage. So they had that skill coming into primary, but we started with just basic weaving on a rectangle weaving board. They choose their colors, it's really interesting because a lot of them might not be interested in it at first, but over time, all of them really were proud of their work and wanting to do more. And so it went from rectangle weaving, we tried circle weaving, we did it outside in big hula hoops, we did it in the fence. And then about 4 or 5 months into it, is that the right math? 4 or 5 months?
Yeah, because I think, if I'm not mistaken in my memory, that you started their culminating project right after the holidays. So it's January.
Yep. And so then after months of weaving and practice doing that, we decided, okay, we're going to do a product for the art show. A weaving, should I even use the word product? It feels kind of...
Are you talking about the collaborative?
No,
or their individual art?
Individual art. So they could choose what kind of art they wanted to display there.
Right. And I think you call it a product, but I mean, the end of it is a product. It's not product art. It's not product handwork. But in that, you weren't saying, you have to weave a placemat. You have to, well, and that's not even a product. But anyway, it's complicated. And we got into that the last episode.
Yes.
But at that point, they were interested in it. They had the skills. You were taking it to another level. And in our mind, in your mind, you're saying, they have the skills and the ability and the interest to do this, and this is probably going to go in the art show.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so they were able to choose from a circle weaving. It was a big embroidery hoop with a smaller one inside it. So it's like negative space in their weaving, which was pretty cool. We'd never done that before.
So cool.
Weaving inside of a wooden frame. And then the third option was to draw a picture and weave the actual picture that they drew. So it was really interesting to see who chose what, and there were a lot of different types to display.
There were, and you had a wide variation of each of those choices. You know, you had a good representation, I should say, of each one of those options the children had. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then through that whole process, Nicole and the teachers, of course, are taking a photo here and there to document, and also making notes about the children's journey through that. So a couple of things I want to ask, if you want to share with our friends here. Have you ever done something you thought was going to be in the art show that wasn't in the art show?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I knew the answer.
Yeah. There are times where we thought, oh yeah, this is going to be awesome. And then it may or may not have been an awesome experience, or the children didn't really enjoy it, so it fizzled out.
Right.
And so, yeah.
And so that's okay too. And also what we do know is we're not really looking for the final product to look a certain way. It's not about the product. It is about the process of creating. But we also are putting products, their finished product in the art show. And yeah, there are times it's like they just weren't interested in it.
Yeah.
And we thought, hey, this experience is just going to really pop for these kids, and they're just going to be so engaged, and they're going to love this. I bet this is going to go in the art show. Wah, wah.
Yeah.
Because that's not really what it's about.
Right.
If they didn't enjoy it, we're not going to, number one, force them to create it.
Mm-hmm.
We want to give them invitations and skills that really draw them in, just like with everything else. And then that takes care of itself.
Right. And so sometimes we'll be reflecting and think, ooh, that was a really cool experience. Look at these pieces. And then it's our job to figure out how we can display it.
Yeah, which is so fun.
Mm-hmm.
That part's really fun. So I want to say, in the beginning, the art show looked different. I would say very different. We had a small number of children in the beginning, so that's a big difference. The size is a lot bigger now. But also, when we first started, I was creating this school that was very different, and building trust in the community, and so forth. And while I was always honoring development, I was still cautious, I think, because I kind of didn't even realize that about myself, I think, as much, but I was still cautious not to completely freak out parents, and for lack of a better term. And so when we started the art show, we were being inspired by famous artists. And I think as educators, we know, like, there are lots of books on creating art inspired by Picasso or inspired by Van Gogh, and so we were doing some of that. And in the previous episode, I talked about our art teacher. It was in that chapter of the school that they were creating something inspired by Picasso, and we made that big error of creating a model without realizing it. So listen to that episode if you haven't yet, parents and teachers, because they're good tips for talking to children and presenting experiences. But anyway, in the beginning, we were doing art inspired by. So we would create like a share board, we call it, like a poster board about a Chihuly. And then we would share photos and books and facts about Chihuly. And then the children would do work inspired by Dale Chihuly. And of course, if you know who he is, he's a glass blower, he's a glass artist, and it's incredible. Well, the children aren't really going to be able to do that. So we did that for several years, and some interesting things came out of it. One was, one time the children said to us, "Oh, so all famous artists are dead." We were like, "Oh, you know what? All of these artists we've talked about are dead." So then we started trying, looking for artists who were alive. And of course we found some, and we did some art inspired by them. And we still do that every once in a while. But here's the difference. We do it very little, and we've come to realize that it really isn't about trying to replicate what an artist did, because that is about a product and it's squelching creativity in some ways, but it's about honoring the way the children learn in the best ways possible. So now our art shows rarely have any art gallery. Each class display is called a gallery, and any gallery that is inspired by an artist. This year we had a gallery inspired by Annie Hoover. And if you don't know who Annie Hoover is, look her up. She lives in New York. She's alive. Good news.
Winning.
And so she did a series of paintings called Dots and Circles, and I believe is the name of them. And so the children create, and they were 30 feet tall. So the children in the preschool create each one an individual painting that's 6 feet tall, kind of inspired by Annie Hoover's paintings. But they all look so different. It's about helping them, begin to have a concept of what's really big compared to them. We send home a string of yarn that's 30 feet long for every child, and talk about, this is the kind of art Annie Hoover created, and lots of other art. But that was the only gallery inspired specifically by an artist. Mm-hmm. So we don't do that at all anymore. So if that's something that you've been doing or you're working with, I just encourage and challenge you a little bit to see that a different way. And really, depending on how you present it and what's going on, is it really just more of a product experience for the children? Or is it really meeting their development where they are?
Right.
So that's been a journey for us, and the art show has evolved. We've also learned different things about displaying the art purely. We used to frame it all in like mats or paper frames that were, carefully cut out, etc. But that really damaged the art a lot of times. So we mount very little. That's really important to us, to display it just as it is. And so we've learned many things along the way.
Yeah. But we've also learned that the display really, it's important to display it in a beautiful way to honor what they've done.
Absolutely. It is important. So when people come into the art show for their first year here at the school, they are most of the time kind of blown away. So I know it's hard to describe that here on a podcast, but we'll have a gallery of the weaving, and we put fabric behind it, and it's displayed beautifully, and beside it the teachers make what we call a documentation panel. So one of the most important things for us is that we are sharing the process and the learning and the deep value of the experience of creating with every gallery. So the teachers write documentation. This is what the children were learning. This was the process. This is the time that they invested. These are the skills that they were building, and it hangs right there beside the art. We have another lesson we've learned over the years is to make that as succinct as possible, because you're there with your family, you're there with your children, grandma and grandpa and aunts, and your neighbor came, and you don't have a lot of time to read all the information. So we make it pretty succinct so that they can get the general overview of the process of creating that gallery. So another gallery we had this year in particular, we had a group of children that did wet felting, and they made wet felted ornaments and hung them. And so the teacher displayed those on branches that she had put in terracotta pots, and they put fairy lights all over the branches to add light to those and to just kind of elevate. So while in and of itself it's simple, each class has between 5 and 7 galleries that they display artwork for their children. So we'll have 30 plus galleries sometimes.
Right. And back to the documentation, we do keep it short at the art show, but we also explain the whole thing in a gallery guide.
Yes. So our incredible Allison here, she creates these gallery guides. So the teachers do a long version of documentation for each gallery. And Allison will put that into a gallery guide. She adds photos of each one and then makes a booklet. And when we send the children's art home, that's included in their art.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the galleries we've had over the years. And every year we have a variety. One thing we do that I think is really cool is every year the children create a self-portrait. So as they move through the school, every year they have some kind of self-portrait that's in the art show. So we have families that have been here from the time their children are 3 all the way through 8th grade, and they have told me they literally have their self-portraits hanging chronologically, in their house, in the stairwell, or on their gallery wall, or wherever. And what a cool thing as, a parent to be able to have the way that they're creating evolves. And they're not doing them all the same way. We're not comparing. They use different mediums each year, depending on which group they're in. They do Sharpie and watercolor. They've done it with they've created with loose parts. They've created their self-portrait. They've done newspaper collage and actual drawing lessons as they get older with the shading and proportion, learning about all of those things. This year we had one, the older children's self-portraits were dolls they made, pipe cleaner dolls with painted their faces with wooden beads and made clothes for them. And they also recreated their classroom indoor and out. And all of the children, their self-portrait dolls were in different areas of the classroom where their favorite places to spend time are. So self-portraits, that's a huge one. Every year we're going to have self-portraits.
Yes.
Every year we have a variety of mediums included. And some of those.
Every year we have action art.
Action art every year. So we went from, we're going to create art inspired by Picasso or Van Gogh or Chihuly or whatever. And Chihuly's still alive too. So, right? Let us know, Chihuly. So, Chihuly's still alive. So anyway, instead of that, what do young children do? They create action art. So their art is about, they're moving. So there's a lot of action art in there. And those things are spin art and spin art on a large scale and a small scale, like I said, 3 or 4 or 5 different ways. And
hammering, pounding paint.
Oh, that's fun. Pounding paint.
Explosion art.
Yeah, that's so fun. Slinky art. They'll stand up on ladders and use slinkies to drop them up and down after dipping them in paint. And so action art, lots of action art.
Yeah, we even did graffiti this year. What do you think that would be included in action art?
Well, it was pretty active, I guess. Yeah.
Yep.
Sure.
So we always have some sort of action art.
Yeah, we're going to call it that.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Okay.
We also have sculpture. Clay, we often have something made out of clay. We have painting, of course.
Sewing and weaving and handwork. Sewing, weaving, felting.
Yes. Yeah. So let's see, like examples over the spectrum of ages. The preschoolers did pom-pom mobiles this year. So those were collaborative pieces in small groups. So they had a stick, and from it hung pom-poms all the children had made. They also made clay beads that they created and painted and strung between their pom-poms. So that was a cool thing. And then the kindergarten children, the cottage children, created clay pots in 2 different ways. And then, of course, we talked about the weaving that the primary children did. And then the children in the collective homeschool co-op visited the potter and created hand building and carving in pottery
And the
tiles.
kindergarten children also did a sewed a stuffed animal, a friendly monster.
Did. Yeah. A friendly monster.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a variety of mediums to display and all of the information that goes with that.
Yeah, and usually we have collaborative pieces that we auction off.
The first year, it was several years, and throughout the years, we still have people who come to the art show expecting to have to purchase their child's art. And we've never done that. But what we do is collaborative pieces are put in an auction, and that helps raise money to cover the cost of the art show. So that's a beautiful opportunity to do that for the parents to have some of those larger collaborative pieces, not always larger, but those collaborative pieces in their homes and support.
Sometimes the animals, our school animals, paint.
That's so
with
fun.
Their snouts.
Yep,
or
this
their
year
feet.
the pigs painted with their snouts.
Yep.
And last year the rats painted paintings. And so that's super fun.
Absolutely.
We have years ahead of us to figure out. If you've listened to our episode about animals and critters, we have a lot. So that's always a fun thing.
Yeah.
So we create the art, we display it beautifully, we add photos and documentation, and then it's showtime.
Yeah. And to see the children's faces when they come into art show and see their art, they're so proud of it. And it's just a really cool experience. It's worth it. We spend a lot of time.
Oh, the teachers spend an extraordinary amount of time behind the scenes.
Yeah, but it's worth it.
And so do our parents.
So
true. The way we do this, and of course you can do it on a much smaller scale. The way we do this, the parents also spend about 2.5 days preparing the space and setting up the galleries, and we have pieces of furniture that we have in storage, and it's evolved over the years, and so it's a pretty well-oiled machine. But this year, for the first time, we had it on campus. None of our our classrooms are in different buildings, and none of them are big enough to accommodate the art show. So we rented a 40-foot by 80-foot tent, and that's what we used, and it really worked. I thought it worked really well.
I thought it was
Don't
awesome.
you? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll probably do that again, I guess. It was an accident. It was a serendipity, because the place we usually have it, we ended up with just a confusion about booking, and it was nobody's fault, really. It just happened. So we had to scramble kind of the month before, once we found out, to figure out what to do, and it really worked out great. So it takes a while to set it up for us. So that takes a little bit of time. The teachers work really hard, but it is worth it. The children, it's kind of emotional. The children come in and they're so proud, and it's so genuine. And as the teacher, as the school director, we're standing there and just kind of in the background waiting to greet the children and help them find their piece in their galleries, etc. And you can see them come in with their families and those people who just are their whole lives, and they're so excited. It really can make you very emotional.
Yeah,
it's a really precious, valuable time. And we also oftentimes will talk to the parents beforehand and give them tips on talking to the children about their art, questions to ask them. How did you create that? What was your favorite part? Ooh, tell me about this. Look what you did. And the children learn through the years how to talk about their art because of these very respectful questions. And so it's a really beautiful thing at Showtime.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So we encourage you to display your process art in a way that honors it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether
even
it's
at home.
a big scale like art show or a smaller scale at home in the classroom,
Right.
it really shows the children and teaches them that they are artists and it's valuable.
Yeah. And we just tell them all the time, you're an artist.
Yeah.
Oh, look at you. You're an artist. You're a scientist. You're, that
you're
goes.
An author.
Yeah. You're an author. You're a mathematician. Look at you doing math. And they are all of those things for sure. And it just helps the adults see their creations with the lens that those creations deserve.
Yeah.
There are a few other bonus things we do, like the gallery guide. I think another really important way of honoring their work is the way we send it home is really respectful. And that's throughout the year. But definitely with the art show, we create a sticker that's got like an art background, and it'll say Nicole's Art. And we get large brown bags and put the sticker on there and gently put all the artwork in there beautifully, and then add the gallery guide. And then we have the parents carefully take that home. So it's like a gift, it's this beautiful little sweet package that is like a gift. And so they take all their art home and unpack it, and usually they set it up at home and put on another art show for their parents, or for whoever comes. They'll have people come over to their house and they'll have their own art show. We've heard about that.
Yeah.
So we package it sweetly, send it home with the gallery guide. We also do a wall of Meet the Artists. So at the art show, we have a wall where every child is photographed, and underneath that, it has specific information about that child. My name is Jennifer. I live in this city. I love these colors. This is my favorite art medium. When I'm not creating art, you can find me doing whatever the children say it is that they enjoy doing the most at school. So Meet the Artist is a fun tradition that we have too. So those go home. But yeah, those are some just kind of additional things that we've added over the years. And I think we've hit the spot where we don't need to add any more. We've checked all the boxes.
I think you're right.
We're not going to add any more. But yeah, it's really valuable.
Yeah. So let's keep the conversation going. What do you wonder about this? What tips and tricks do you have for your art show? Like us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Follow us, and all of our episodes air every Tuesday morning at 6 a.m. on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks so much. We'll talk next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. To learn more and join the movement, go to savechildhood.org.